Just a program note here. This is the VCTV program, Work at Wellness, Wellness at Work. We're talking about spirituality today. Well, what does that have to do with wellness? Well, guess what? We already know. I mean, it's been proven that people who have a regular spiritual dimension to their lives by their own assessment, people who attend church regularly, people who have a spiritual element in their lives do live longer. Conversely, all of the people who are looking at the life extension and ways to extend our mortality, our physical lives, one of the local community people who is very involved in the whole anti-aging and the aging issue is my own father, Dr. Pugliese, who actually had a history as a seminarian. He was in the seminary. He was going to be a priest. And as he went on in career and began to talk and lecture around the country about these different issues, the issue of spirituality came up. And his comment was, ultimately there is a time when you are extending your life, you come to a point when all of your physical needs are met, when your partnership needs are met, your family needs are met. The last stage is that you have to begin to believe in something, because there really is no point in extending your life unless you do believe in something. So that spiritual connection is something, when you have a generation of people like the one we have right now, these questions are coming up more and more and more, and this is why we're addressing this with you today. So one of the questions, again, that came up again and again and again is, what do you believe? What do you believe? How do you start? What makes people want to start believing in something? Are you sitting there in pain this morning? Are you watching this morning and hoping that there's going to be an answer here somewhere to where do you start? Well, maybe, maybe not. But asking is the first step. And one of the things that I talked about with Father is the differences between different religions when you go to choose. There's the evangelical side of things that believes very much one way, that the Lord is coming. If you have not done this thing, it's going to be too late. My question to him was, what about all those other people that believe very strongly in what they believe? What if you don't do it right? What if you pick the wrong team, the wrong club? These are questions that we wanted to talk about, and this is what Father had to say basically about the differences between the evangelical way of conversion, of turning your life over when you make that decision. And this is one of the perspectives that he had on the differences between the Catholic Church and all of its rules and structures and rituals and the evangelical church, and we'll just touch on that comparison. Here's what he said.
At some point, we all have to look ourselves in the eye and say, is God number one in my life? As evangelicals say, is my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ? Can I say that yes or no right now? Conversion for them is once and done. Right. So that same bottom line, are we living for God as Christians? Are we living for Jesus Christ? Are we living for ourselves? Is the basic question that we need to ask. And from there, that whole idea of how do we get there, that's different. Conversion for many different denominations would say that is conversion, are you yes or no? It's once and done. Were you born again on this specific date?
And according to that procedure.
Right.
According to that, it's a very specific...
Right. And we say that we do have to ask a question if we're living for Jesus or not. Is Jesus number one in our lives? But conversion is continual for us. It's like if someone comes up and says, are you married? Yes or no? You can say yes or no. But unless you continue to live out that commitment on a daily basis, it's going to fall apart. So same thing with life. Are we living for Jesus? Yes. Is Jesus my Savior? Yes. And unless I continue to grow in that. So being born again is not that idea of just once and done for Catholics. It's a continual process, and that's the main difference between evangelicals and Catholics would be how we see conversion. It's as Catholics, it's not one and done. It's continual. It's
every day.
Yeah. And that gets back to that idea of spirituality, that we're continually on the search.
The question of where do you find your faith is certainly an important one. And the question even before that is, what makes people start that search? What is the thing that triggers? If you haven't been brought up with it, what is the thing that triggers your faith? It's been said that there are no atheists in a foxhole, and so you hear all the time about the foxhole conversions or the prison conversions. Must the search begin with something, with fear, with please help me? So we talked about that a little bit, and again, the difference between why you should, for instance, look for a spiritual connection rather than a medical remedy, some other kind of remedy. Talked about the genesis of people's faith and why they would start searching. That's what Father had to say.
Cross it's from abandonment, hopelessness, great physical pain and, well, torture in Jesus' case. From that moment comes redemption. So it's in the hopelessness that we come to know hope. It's in the total fears that we come to a deeper trust. St. John the Cross talks about the dark night of the soul. It's only in the darkness that we really can come to the light. Otherwise, spirituality is just trying to use what we have here in the world. Spirituality is when we get to the point where we're saying, I can't do it myself. There has to be something bigger. Generically, we hear about it in terms of the bigger power.
Is that bothersome to you? Do you hate that phrase? Does the higher power phrase bug you? I mean, honestly.
Not at all. I used the wrong one, right? The bigger power. Sorry, higher power, yeah.
But you know what I mean.
I do. Well, no, because it's the beginning. Okay. When you get to that point where I can't do this myself, that's the beginning of spirituality. So what to do, the next step. I know sometimes there is a tendency where you just get stuck on, I'm searching, I'm looking for higher power, and I know that I don't have the answers, so I have to give it over to the higher power. At some point, you have to name that higher power, because otherwise it just kind of becomes too vague. It's really in the loneliness and the hopelessness that's what we bring to. That's what Jesus brought in the agony in the garden. Jesus said, he was sweating blood. He was crying. If it's possible, why don't you send someone else on this mission? Yeah. Oh. And then afterwards come to, okay, not my will, but yours. So that the beginning comes from that sense of wow, I don't know what to do. And then we come to that idea of trust.
You may have noticed in this program we are doing something a little differently. If you've been watching our show regularly, you will notice that there's no guest next to me here in the studio. Our program this year, at least certainly through the end of this transformative, wonderful spring season, and transformation is going to be our theme. And you can start anywhere. You can start physically. You can start spiritually. You can start mentally. But there seems to be a transformative desire, and part of what we're going to try to do in the next couple of programs that we're doing is we're going to be going out into the community rather than being here in the studio. So kind of like Stone Phillips right here in your own town. We're going to be going to the places where the people who we believe have something to contribute to you, or at least have some information as a starting point, where you can find them and introduce you to them in their own environment. So it's a little bit of a new thing, and it may not be an absolutely seamless kind of a production that we're doing, but we like to do things a little bit differently and try to keep your interest and try to give you the best information you can. And so in this interview with Father John Gibbons from St. Margaret's Church, we did go to the parish, and that is where this is taped. I wanted to mention also that in the Christmas season, that St. Margaret's Rectory, which is a very historic building here, is one of the places that is open, and I think another part of this interview that we won't have time to show you today may be brought back in December. And again, I just want to take this opportunity to thank Father John Gibbons so very much for his time and for his thoughtfulness and for sharing his perspective with us. We addressed one more issue. There were so many things that could be covered and could have been covered, and we hope that somewhere in what I brought you today is an answer, or at least a little spark that maybe you can follow through with a little bit. I guess the question that begs to be answered in all of us is the very basic questions. Who am I? What am I? What is the meaning of life? Do I count? Why keep going? With a lot of the desperation and a lot of the things that have happened, there are wars, there are holy wars, wars in the name of God. So there's really no confusion as to why people are confused and where they stand and where you fit in as a human being. So in trying to sort of give not really a summary, but trying to sort of get a handle on what religion can do, what having and practicing a faith can do to help you answer those questions, and what the genesis is of making people look, with some of the things that really we tried to bring you today. And this is what Father had to say about, I said if there was sort of one thing that you could say to people who may be listening and may be looking for some kind of an answer, what would that be? And here's part of that discussion.
That we are spirits in the world, and that everything we do, there's something inside of us that wants to get outside of ourselves. And that going outside of ourselves is how we become ourselves. As Jesus says, it's you hate life, then you come to understand what life is. You give up of your own selfish ideas, you come to a greater understanding of what and who we are. So that whole idea of being spirits in the world, that generosity, that is what we're talking about. In going out of ourselves. And God, across the board, would be pure generosity. Totally going out of ourselves. God so loved the world. He gave us something. God doesn't have a beginning, doesn't have an end. And what did He do? He came as this little baby in this little dirty stall where the mules and the chickens and the horses slept at night in Bethlehem. And that was the beginning. The Word made flesh. And so for us to live in our spirituality, it has to come out of that idea of what we do in the world is what we do with our spirit, that we are in-fleshed spirits. It's not spirituality over here, religion over here, myself over here, my soul over here. No, it's all one.